we live in a society that promotes democratic ideals, which include, under our Constitution, freedom of religion. One of the key pieces for the American society to work is to allow for tolerance of other religions, that there is no government-sanctioned religion. The idea of this religion of this unit on religions, comparative religions, is for introduce students to other ideas. What are other beliefs out there? One purpose of this is to try to get kids to see and understand and to demystify beliefs and what people believe in. Look for the common threads that run through these different religions. To understand, hey, as human beings, we all have questions about why are we here, how was the world formed, what happens after death. I mean, these are adolescents, and they know that they are asking those questions of themselves. But they're not going to stand up and say, you know, well, I've been wondering about this. But when you can do it within the context of a lesson like this, it actually sort of helps them think about their own mortality, think about their place. First, I want to do some just general brainstorming to see what we remember about these religions that we've already sort of studied. So you're going to want to face me a bit, and let's see first, what do we remember? What do we remember about Hinduism?
Didn't it start in India?
Good, okay. India. What else do we remember about Hinduism? Yeah.
They have several gods. They're all part of one.
Okay, and if they're
Rama.
polytheistic, okay. Good, polytheistic. We've looked individually at the religions in terms of what do these religions believe in. Religions, in Islam, there is only one Allah, and that is Allah. In Judaism, the same idea that there's only one God. In Christianity, again, the basic tenet of a monotheistic, there's only one God. Other basic beliefs that they have in terms of life after death, basic beliefs they have as to how the universe was formed. Their basic beliefs in... It's the idea that if you live good lives, you will have a good afterlife. Hindus, what was your afterlife?
They had another life after that.
Reincarnation, right? The soul is but then what's the ultimate goal? Nirvana, similar to Buddhism, right? The idea that eventually you would reach this enlightenment, this absolute peace. What about the other religions? Christianity, what did we have for pardon? A heaven. Okay, and the image is that this would be a very peaceful place. So as the kids feel more comfortable realizing that they know something, and they do, they've learned something, they know it, then you just keep pulling to, okay, now let's go the next step. Can we broaden what we know? Can we generalize? Can we build towards a concept? Focus on what they have in common. That was what I wanted to hold about. You might want to give us some background if there's, special rituals that the religion has for life cycle events.
We have to do life cycle events too. Like the 7 sacraments and Catholic, we have to do life cycle.
Okay, but we want all of that. I'm looking for sacred places and sacred writing. Writing?
I have legends.
That might be good. Amanda says like the Bible and that kind of stuff, but...
What is the purpose of religion, then?
That's something to live by.
Rules to live by?
Yeah.
Okay, and they all have their own set of rules.
What happens like after death and being born and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, the idea that there are those rites of passage when you're born, when you're married. You follow the rules, you will have peace after death. And that seems to drive people. Religion is a major factor in human development and human function. It's a major factor in the way societies and cultures come together. And it's a major force in political and economic issues throughout the world. You can't ignore it. Where is your religion involved in some hot spots today? You're going to choose one of those hot spots and really do some research on what's happening there. Can we get any kind of a handle on the cause for the conflict? Who are the who's involved in the conflict. We're going to do some research on the conflict itself. They'll come to me as they're doing their research very confused about, well, where's Israel, where's Palestine, where's Judea, where's Canaan? And I have to tell them it's all the same place. And for them it's, I don't understand. Well, that's part of the problem. So, watching them realize that it's so confusing. And I think that's what is fun for me to watch too, is to see a student recognize the complexity of issues.
My part of the hotspot was the conflict between the Tibetan area and the China's communistic rule over it. And the Dalai Lama's been working on a 5-point peace plan to try to get the Tibetan area free from the communistic rule of China, because the Buddhists are for complete non-violence, and they have been for thousands of years.
And also he speaks to important leaders like we have pictures of, creating alliances rather than going to war.
Okay, good point. The idea of if he can build enough alliances and support from other leaders in the world who would then use their influence on China to free Tibet. When you're spending a lot of time in ancient and classical world, and students are like, why am I studying this? Who cares about the Punic Wars and and the folks of Carthage or something? This really kind of helps pull some of that ancient world forward into the contemporary world. And what students will find is when they start looking at some of the conflicts, that the conflicts go back not just decades but centuries. And we can see some of that conflict back in the time periods that we're studying. So it does help then reinforce the study of medieval and ancient history. I think when you're dealing with controversial issues, it becomes even more crucial that the teacher doesn't voice a prejudice. And I made sure that we had all 5 religions involved so that no religion could be, without, somehow without a conflict. Everybody was involved in a conflict somewhere. So no religion was going to look any better or any worse than any other religion. So those are the kinds of things that a teacher has to kind of guide, that you maintain some sort of kind of balance and fair play on how we approach a controversial issue. Then let them sort it out and do the thinking. If you have students in your class who are from areas of conflict, where you have Muslims and Jews in a classroom, and we do have Muslims and Jews in a classroom, how do you keep it from becoming, personalized? First of all, I don't want anyone in my class to feel that they represent their religion. I never ask what religions they are. I pull kids away from them having conversations where they're demanding answers from one another that would put a child on a spot. There's no one in my class should represent Christianity or Hinduism. Think about some of the causes that you talked about in terms of the hot spots. What were some of the causes? What are some of the reasons for the conflicts?
Land.
Religion.
What else could it be?
Power.
Power. Talk to me about power. What do you mean? Political? What about economic power? How would it play out? One group believes it's being denied rights by another, and we're talking about it in terms of economics.
People getting beat out for jobs.
People beat out by jobs. Good. Okay.
Take everyday life from the people.
Not buying because I won't buy it at a Muslim store, I'll only buy it at a Hindu store. Right? Sure. So the idea of economic power becomes a factor here too. We're teaching them some of the methods that a historian would use or a social scientist would use to study a problem or study an issue. And there is a certain, you remove yourself from it. There's a distance. That's a problem, I'm going to study it. I'm not part of the problem. And by trying to introduce them to those methods that a social scientist would use or historian would use, I think helps to moderate any kinds of problems that might arise from tackling the topic.
I'm going to give you the essay assignment. People throughout the world and throughout history have demonstrated a need for religion because religion can bring a personal peace. Yet, religion has also been a factor in conflict. How do you explain that dichotomy?
I tell them from the beginning, you can think whatever you want to think. I'm not grading you on your opinion, I'm grading you on how well you express your opinion. For a lot of them, they don't understand that concept until we do projects like comparative religion, where I'm not grading them on what their conclusion is, on what their opinion is about the dichotomy. I want to see whether they can recognize the dichotomy, whether they can develop the argument, do they have their support material, facts, evidence that's accurate, have they organized the essay in a proper format, do they have their bibliography, what kind of sources did they use, and those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. We've been doing essays up till now where they start with an introductory paragraph, because they're mostly compare-contrast kinds of essays. So no, this time you're going to start with the middle. You're going to develop the one body talking about how, yes, in fact, religions promote peace. Then you're going to develop sort of an essay that talks about how religions are part of conflict. Those would be the concrete pieces that they need. Then, once they've got those written down, now step back and say, well, can you make any sense of that? And hopefully what will happen is they will feel comfortable enough realizing that they know the concrete, that it may trigger that little cell in their brain that gets them moving from concrete to abstract.
Different kind of essay than we've been doing, but it's the kind of essays we kind of write in history, where we try to explain why we've got things going on that don't seem to make any sense, and then we try to make sense of them.
It was scary for them because a lot of kids, they come up and they, well, what's the right answer? What answer do you want me to give you? Whereas, I'm saying, well, there is no right or wrong. You just have to tell me what you think.
So suddenly we're now allowing religion to become a tool of prejudice, discrimination, and that leads to violence. But doesn't all that run counter to religions are supposed to give us a sense of peace? So how do we deal with that? How do we explain the prejudice, the discrimination, the violence in the name of religion when religion is supposed to bring us a sense of peace?
It's human nature to want more.
Human nature to want more?
Yeah.
What's that called? Greed? But don't most of the religions preach against greed? Is there any religion here that supported the idea of greed? No. And yet humans, I think you're right, that humans have this tendency
Not many people are totally faithful to the religions anyway, like they don't follow it exactly how it should be.
Okay, so that may be where some of the problem comes in.
So we had, the conversation. Basically, we had enough of a conversation that they could all be writing their essays just based on what we talked about. They would turn that in, I would comment on it, and give it back to them, and they would have a chance to rewrite the essay, sort of a final draft, where they would then pull it together, and I would give them sort of help on how do you then write an umbrella introduction and a conclusion that pulls it all back together again. Some students argued that it wasn't so much that the religion was involved in the conflict, but there were people who are abusing the religion that are creating the conflict, which I thought was very insightful, that they could separate the radicals, whether you call them extremists or terrorists, whatever, who are misinterpreting the religion, and therefore you end up with conflict. And that was pretty good thinking on their part. What encouraged them was when they then got a good grade on the paper, because they had developed a good argument and they had their points made well. And so they got a good grade, and I think it reinforced for them the idea that, oh, I can think, I can do this. Okay. If you keep pushing them to think that way, to just try to think that way, I think what it does is eventually it sort of exercises the muscle, if you will, the little gray cell, until it finally wakes up. And you get it by just keep asking and pushing, having them talk to one another, that sometimes what they'll hear from another student will trigger an idea in their head. As a history teacher at high school level, what becomes important is to just push those kids anyway. Force them to go through that door. I had a teacher when I was in high school who advised me when I decided to go into teaching. He said, you know, what your job is to just open doors for kids. That's your job as a high school teacher. You got to open those doors for them, because otherwise they'll always stay shut.
This is not an easy task for these 9th graders, but Fran explicitly taught them how to think and how to communicate their analysis in coherent essays. With a step-by-step process, opportunities to listen to how others think, and support through various drafts, Fran has opened the doors to complex thinking for these teenagers who are just 3 short years away from adulthood.